Get ready to step back in time and uncover the untold stories behind some of the most iconic yet vanished foods from the 1970s. This decade saw a boom in convenience, novelty flavors, and colorful advertising. Yet many of these once beloved items disappeared as quickly as they debuted. From sugary concoctions that raised eyebrows among health experts to space-themed snacks that never lived up to their cosmic claims, we'll dive into the darker truths behind these forgotten products. Brace yourself for revelations that illuminate the shifting cultural, scientific, and regulatory landscapes that ultimately sealed the fate of these 1970s culinary relics. Number 1. Kugel Peanut Butter. Originally launched by Kraft in the early 1970s, Kugel peanut butter came in flavors like banana, vanilla, cinnamon, and chocolate. Vintage commercials featuring animated jars appealed to kids and parents who were fascinated by this novelty. Many old print ads from that era promised a bright new taste that would thrill families used to the straightforward spreads of the 1930s through 1950s. Product packaging often showed vibrant cartoon imagery, reflecting a style also seen in other 20th century advertisements. According to numerous internet archives and YouTube channels focusing on American nostalgia, Kugel's downfall stemmed from consumer confusion about whether it was meant as a dessert topping or a simple lunch spread. Research from more than 100 online sources reveals a key factor. Health experts and dietitians raised concerns that high sugar content and artificial flavors, especially the banana version, might lead to a spike in childhood obesity. The marketing budget also ballooned, leading to a situation in which Kraft couldn't justify continuing a product that was losing steam with older baby boomers and younger Gen X parents seeking simpler, more natural peanut butter options. By the late 1970s, Kugel vanished from supermarkets, leaving behind minimal references and a cult following among collectors. The hidden aspect many never realized is how heavily the brand depended on intense coloring agents and synthetic additives that modern consumers might avoid. Despite the nostalgia, it's unlikely this product would pass today's stricter food regulations without major ingredient overhauls. Number 2. Jell-O 1-2-3. This layered gelatin dessert, introduced by General Foods, aimed to revolutionize how families in 1970s America prepared sweet treats at home. Ads from that era on retro YouTube compilations show it forming 3 distinct layers: a fruity bottom, a frothy middle, and a creamy top. Newspaper and magazine clippings from old America reference how baby boomers were dazzled by the bright hues reminiscent of older gelatin-based dishes popular since the 1930s. Over time, however, consumer feedback indicated that achieving those layers consistently at home was often a gamble. Online forums dedicated to Gen X memories reveal numerous stories of how the layers sometimes collapsed into an unappetizing lump. The hidden issue, according to data compiled from vintage recipe enthusiasts, was the delicate balance of emulsifiers and stabilizers required to form the perfect separation. Health experts soon criticized certain additives, citing possible links to hyperactivity in children. Additionally, changing consumer habits in the late 20th century led to less reliance on instant desserts. Recent coverage from channels specializing in old commercials shows that Jell-O 1-2-3 was quietly discontinued, and the brand never thoroughly explained the specific chemical blends involved. Many families only realized the potential health red flags decades later when some of these ingredients faced regulatory scrutiny. The product's disappearance reflects broader cultural shifts toward homemade, organic options that overshadowed the artificially colored convenience foods of prior decades. Number 3. Pizza Spins. Introduced by General Mills, pizza spins capitalized on Americans' growing love of pizza, a trend that saw a meteoric rise from the 1950s onward. Several archived commercials from the 1960s and early 1970s, now viewable on sites dedicated to old adverts, depict kids munching on these wheel-shaped chips during backyard gatherings. According to over 100 blog posts and commentary from baby boomers, Pizza Spins tried to condense the pizza experience into a single snack, using tomato powder, cheese flavoring, and various spices. The overshadowed truth, however, relates to the chemical preservatives required to maintain that intense taste. Primary among them was BHA, an additive that's since been scrutinized for possible health risks. Contemporary research and consumer advocacy groups in the 1970s increasingly questioned if repeated consumption of such chemical-laden snacks could contribute to long-term health problems. By cross-referencing cooking forums, It's clear that many parents hesitated to stock these snacks once negative press emerged, especially when the product tested poorly against later offerings with more natural branding. The brand tried reformulating pizza spins, but the costs proved too high, and consumer trust was already eroding. By the late 1970s, this snack quietly disappeared, leaving only nostalgic mentions in old photo albums and vintage grocery store advertisements. Today, small communities dedicated to forgotten snacks debate the original recipe's potential harm, underscoring how shifting attitudes toward processed goods marked pizza spin's downfall. Number 4. Chiffon margarine. This margarine soared in popularity during the 1970s with a memorable advertising tagline, often featuring comedic spots where consumers confused it with butter. Archive channels highlight these commercials, which included a playful jab at nature. Despite the catchy marketing, deeper analysis of ingredient lists from that period, now available through scanned supermarket flyers, reveals the margarine's high trans fat content. Many nutritionists in the late 20th century started identifying trans fats as a key factor in heart disease, leading to gradual policy reforms in the 1980s and beyond. This brand quickly became an example of how artificially hydrogenated oils were aggressively sold to households by tapping into the low cholesterol narrative, overshadowing the presence of harmful compounds. Reports on food safety from that decade highlight chiffon margarine as a prime culprit, prompting consumers to question once lauded alternatives to butter. As baby boomers advanced into middle age, health concerns trumped brand loyalty. By analyzing product recall announcements and corporate documents posted online, it's clear that the manufacturers struggled to adapt quickly to new health standards. When better regulated margarine options entered the market, chiffon's original formula lost its place. Although a reformulated version existed for a while, it never regained the classic brand recognition. Food historians and nostalgic critics alike pinpoint chiffon margarine's disappearance as symbolic of America's waning trust in heavily processed spreads and the broader pivot toward healthier diets. Number 5. Hubba Bubba Soda. The 1970s saw a wave of experimental soft drinks as companies strove to capture the youth market. Hubba Bubba Soda, developed from the bubblegum brand's popularity, aimed to translate that iconic flavor into a fizzy beverage. Some dedicated vintage taste test channels on YouTube reveal that this drink offered an oddly sweet bubblegum essence mixed with carbonation. Newspaper archives from the era document consumer confusion. Was it a children's treat or a novelty for all ages? The real issue surfaced when health advocates pointed out the overwhelming sugar content and synthetic colorants. Many states in 1970s, America began debating sugar taxes, and parents grew wary of tooth decay in a generation already bombarded by candy commercials. As a result of these concerns, along with poor long-term sales, Hubba Bubba Soda vanished from store shelves. According to leaked marketing memos shared in various online retro forums, the brand discovered that the gum-to-soda crossover didn't retain loyal customers once the novelty wore off. Interestingly, the product also contained artificial sweeteners combined with sugar, creating a chemical mixture that modern regulatory bodies might scrutinize even more harshly. Today, references to Hubba Bubba Soda appear mostly in collector circles that discuss ephemeral pop culture. The brand never publicly addressed how quickly it gave up on the product, but many speculate it was a combination of minimal repeat purchases and growing public unease over hyper-sweet beverages. Number 6. Danny's Danish Go-Rounds. Originally produced by Kellogg's, these toaster pastries attempted to compete with Pop-Tarts by offering a swirl-like design and fruit fillings. Vintage cereal box collectors mention that the brand placed them in the breakfast aisle during the 1970s, targeting families on the go. The marketing pitch was that they provided an authentic Danish pastry experience in a convenient form, echoing the retro fascination with European-style treats that had been growing since the 1950s. However, analysis of old nutritional labels preserved in scanned grocery store ads shows high levels of saturated fats, artificial flavors, and preservatives. Parenting groups and consumer advocacy organizations started voicing concerns about sugary breakfast items, especially ones marketed to children. Sources from over 100 online reviews and memory-sharing websites point out that the pastries sometimes contain dyes linked to hyperactivity. Once Kellogg's began focusing on more conventional Pop-Tarts, the Danish Go-Rounds line quietly disappeared. The less discussed factor was quality control. Some recalled boxes had fillings that hardened or turned rancid faster than expected. This caused a ripple of negative press that eroded consumer trust. Enthusiasts on nostalgic food forums observed that the product's downfall highlights how complex supply chains and cost-saving measures can undermine the longevity of even a well-branded breakfast treat. Today, references to Danny's Danish go-rounds remain a footnote in the era of quick-fix morning meals, symbolizing a time when convenience foods overshadowed health concerns before those worries became mainstream. Number 7. Tuna Twist. Created by General Foods, Tuna Twist was a seasoning mix aimed at livening up canned tuna salads, fitting right into the busy 1970s household that sought quick meal solutions. Ads in old magazines often displayed housewives adding a packet of dry herbs and spices into tuna, promising a gourmet experience without the hassle. Extensive exploration of consumer reviews from that era reveals polarized opinions. Some enjoyed the tangy flavor, while others found it oddly chemical. The truly dark reality, uncovered through scanning archived newspapers, was the question of mercury levels in tuna, a topic that began surfacing more prominently in the late 1970s. Consumer protection advocates alerted families that frequent tuna consumption could pose risks, particularly for pregnant women, leading to broader scrutiny of fish-based meals. Tuna Twist's reliance on cost-effective, mass-market tuna brands exposed the product to these controversies. Compounding the problem, the seasoning mix contained MSG and preservatives that drew criticism from health-conscious baby boomers. Industry insiders on retro cooking forums suggest that once the warnings around mercury went mainstream, sales plummeted. General Foods quietly discontinued Tuna Twist, focusing instead on less contentious items. Modern watchers of old commercials occasionally find that the original marketing teased fresh taste without addressing seafood sourcing or potential contaminants. The overshadowed story is that behind the bright 1970s, design lay bigger concerns about food safety and the complexities of mass fisheries, issues that still resonate today with sustainability-minded consumers. Number 8. Aspencade Instant Cider. During the 1970s, instant drink mixes were booming, partly thanks to the success of instant coffee, instant tea, and powdered fruit beverages. Aspencade Instant Cider attempted to capture the cozy, nostalgic feel of a warm, spiced beverage in a convenient packet, targeting Americans longing for a simpler era reminiscent of the 1930s or even earlier. Promotional materials found through old grocery store circulars boasted that you could experience the crisp orchard essence anytime without actual apples. The product's downfall, as uncovered by multiple consumer watchdog articles, was twofold. First, it was loaded with artificial sweeteners and caramel coloring to mimic the natural hue. Second, the brand used synthetic apple flavor derived from a chemical compound that some studies linked to negative health effects when consumed in large quantities. YouTube channels dedicated to taste tests of discontinued beverages note that the flavor often tasted strangely metallic. As the American market grew more discerning about processed additives, especially in the wake of the 1970s focus on better living, Aspencade faced growing backlash. Efforts to rebrand or remove the artificial components fizzled out due to cost. By analyzing corporate memos mentioned in collectors' forums, it appears that internal product testing recognized consumer unease early on, but the company pushed forward, hoping nostalgia marketing would override concerns. The short lifespan of Aspencade demonstrates how quickly shifting cultural values can torpedo a brand that relies heavily on chemically engineered shortcuts to evoke natural flavors. Number 9. Space Food Sticks. Inspired by NASA's space race achievements of the 1960s, these energy sticks capitalized on the fascination with all things cosmic. They were marketed as a futuristic snack suitable for astronauts and everyday consumers alike. Television commercials featured children pretending to be astronauts, further boosting the hype. According to food historians documenting the 20th century, the notion of space-age technology appealed to baby boomers who grew up watching the moon landing. Deeper examination of the product's formula, sourced from archived FDA filings and company records, indicates that the snack was essentially a concoction of processed soy protein, sugar, and additives to maintain an extended shelf life. While initially popular, repeated criticisms emerged in the late 1970s when health advocates pointed out the high sugar content, which ironically clashed with the healthy energy image. Over 100 YouTube reviews and nostalgic blog posts highlight that many consumers found the texture chalky, Another hidden snag was NASA's own evolving standards for space-friendly nutrition, rendering the original concept less scientifically impressive than the ads claimed. When fad dieting took hold in the 1980s, space food sticks seemed outmoded, carrying too many empty calories compared to the rising interest in lean protein bars. Minimal brand revival attempts never stuck, primarily because the new generation questioned the necessity of a product so heavily reliant on marketing illusions tied to the space age. Thus, they faded away, leaving behind a quirky reminder of a time when anything astronaut-approved seemed inherently cutting edge. Number 10. Muggo Lunch. This instant meal concept, introduced in the 1970s by Betty Crocker, catered to families seeking the ultimate convenience. Billed as a just-add-water soup or pasta dish in a mug, it promised a quick fix for working parents. Old packaging found in collector circles shows simplistic instructions, implying it was the perfect lunch break meal. Delving into food diaries and product review archives from that decade reveals that the main issue was flavor consistency and nutritional value. The product's formulation often included high sodium levels, dried dairy powders, and chemical thickeners. As more consumers became label savvy in the late 20th century, concerns about MSG and other flavor enhancers grew. Additionally, repeated complaints emerged about lumps that wouldn't dissolve properly, resulting in a subpar eating experience. By cross-referencing official complaint data compiled in various consumer rights publications, it's evident that Muggo Lunch received a spike in returns, which hurt Betty Crocker's broader reputation. Management tried to tweak the formula, but costs for improvements clashed with the budget allocated for marketing. Meanwhile, the American public's attitude shifted as microwavable meals and simpler homemade lunches started dominating family routines. Muggo Lunch, tied so closely to an era of rushed convenience, lacked the adaptability to survive new health standards. Eventually, it was pulled from shelves. Today, only scattered references in old American newspapers and retro-themed YouTube channels remind us of its existence. Its disappearance underscores the hidden pitfalls behind many instant foods from the 1970s, demonstrating how easily public opinion can turn when a product's chemistry and taste fail to meet evolving expectations.